All right. We're back. Jack of all trades. We got another great show for you guys today. I'm with Jack Newman at Jack Viking on Twitter. I'm Gates Haug at First Gator on Twitter. Feel free to reach out to us there. Today's episode, we're going to take a look at some mushroom. We're going to discuss wild mushroom hunting, mushroom foraging. Jack, you're kind of somewhat of an expert on this, but folks, these aren't your psychedelic, get your head all groovy, woovy, Grateful Dead type mushrooms. These are mushrooms that can actually provide some health, nutrition, some a good way to get some exercise and things like that. Jack, when you go out into your local forest preserve, and we're here in Illinois just for reference, what are some of the things that you look for in the landscape on where to find some of these mushrooms?
All right. Well, yeah. So I'm actually I'm no expert, but I got into the hobby about 6 years ago, just through kind of an outdoorsy thing. I'm into fishing. Used to hunt more, and people would talk about them in the spring, and I heard about the morel mushrooms, and so I got into it that way. And then each year I've just put a little bit more learning on top of it. So I would say I'm not an expert, but there are plenty of resources, and we'll talk about those later. But for me, when I go out now, this is morel season. So when I go out now, I'll look for dead trees. I'll look for areas that are, in the spring, I'm looking for when the forest starts to get green on the floor of the forest. That's when it starts happening. But basically, you're looking for elm, ash, dead trees that are dead or dying. And so if you'll see around us, there's a lot of dying ash trees. And so you'll see so you could go online and look up what an ash tree is. And then if you see the bark kind of separating and the trees kind of dying, that's a dying ash tree. And we had a lot of ash borer beetles, I believe. I think they're beetles. But anyway, we just lost a lot of ash trees. And so if you just kind of go from tree to tree, and one of the keys is to look, you look on the ground where morel mushrooms grow on the ground, and you look for them, and you look slowly when you get around those types of trees. And I'll show you here, or I'll try to share my screen. And this here, can you see that?
Yeah, it's coming up here. Should be. Give it a second, I think.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's just me on there. I don't. Oh, there you go. There we go. There's some.
Yeah.
There.
These are for people who don't know. These are morel mushrooms. To the right here, this is kind of what they look like in the wild. They just grow out of the ground. They got this little honeycomb, very distinct. And this is just a Google search for morel images. So you go there and you check it out, and you get kind of an idea of what they look like. And then if you get one in your hand, you can compare it back to that. And I would say, for anybody just to go to a chat site or definitely a Facebook site, and morel mushrooms can be easily identified.
Okay, so morels, those are pretty much the most popular mushroom around, and it comes now in the spring. Is that what I understand? After you get a little bit of rain, some moisture, and the sun comes out and warms things up like anything else, it would be just growing in the wild that way, or?
Yeah, I mean, they're. I'll tell you why. A big reason why morels are popular is that they're hard to grow commercially. So about the only way to get them is in the wild, or to buy them from someone who found them in the wild with any real consistency. So they're extremely expensive. So that's kind of what makes it like nobody really wants to pay. It's like almost like they're priceless, So no one wants to. There's not a good market for them. There's not a good supply for them. So that in itself raises demand and then makes the price like they could be $75 a pound.
Jeez, wow,
Yeah.
$70 a pound.
Right. So it's better to go out and just find them when they're in season, check them out, because I'll be honest, I don't think they're worth $75 a pound just to eat. Like I would rather buy, a lot of steak, or lobster or something that's, a better a more liquid market. But so that's a real popular mushroom, you know, and they're basically the first mushroom to come out in the season. But what a lot of people don't realize is that as the season goes on, there's wild mushrooms all summer, and to me they're just as good as the morel in taste. They're all unique. And again, I'm not an expert to where I eat all the ones that are even available to me in my region, but you know, good ones are oyster mushrooms. There's a mushroom called chicken of the woods. And I'll get another screen share here, and we can show how it might take another second to pop up, but I will basically show you how simple it is to like go online and uh, and look up, you know, chicken of the woods. You know, it's not as complicated. You know, it's not as complicated as you tell me when you get when you
There
can
it
see
is.
my.
We're seeing
Okay.
it now. Yeah.
So you see this bright orange, beautiful mushroom, and this is around here in Illinois, and you kind of adjust for weather and latitude, but it's basically early summer is when you'll start seeing these, and you'll see these all the way to late summer, and they're pretty random. You know, mushrooms are pretty random, and so the biggest key to me to finding mushrooms is to spend time looking for mushrooms. Like if you are in the woods looking around trees, that's when you're going to find mushrooms. And definitely when there's a rain, after a rain, you know, uh, fungus tend to develop, you know, around, you know, a combination of some moisture and some heat, and even just seasonal heat. So the morels in the spring will be when the temperature goes from the 40s to the 50s to the 60s, and then your summer mushrooms just tend to go when it goes from the 50s to 60s, 70s, 80s, and then as you move into the fall, there are some fall mushrooms we can talk about that will uh, be the opposite. They'll as the temperatures start to drop, these mushrooms will start to show up, and they all kind of have a symbiotic relationship with the trees that they grow on and around.
Okay, so now these look pretty they look kind of funky. I don't know if I'm like walking around if I'm gonna be like, well, geez, maybe that's something I should eat. You know, it's got that funky orange look to it,
Mm-hmm.
but how does it taste like? Say I'll go to, let's say, my local grocery store and I'll get some mushrooms. How similar are these in taste to something that you just get off the shelf? Are they
Well,
still
these right here aren't very similar. These are definitely they're named chicken in the woods a lot because they taste like chicken. You can cook them like you would any chicken dish, and you can kind of slice them up into smaller bits and cook them more like a mushroom dish. But like you could fry these, you could saute them in butter and onions, you know, and basically, and again, you know, the internet's always your friend. You could find recipes for chicken in the woods for days, you know, on here. So, you know, I would say, you know, do just find these, do a little research. The most important part of these is when you find some, harvest them, double check, go online, look up for the Wikipedia page, go to a mushroom expert page, make sure you've got chicken of the woods, and then try a small portion first and see, you know, if your body likes them. As far as, you know, some people are going to be allergic to strawberries, you could be allergic to shellfish, you could probably be you can be allergic to mushrooms and different types of mushrooms. So it's always a, you know, be careful, but know what you're eating. You know, never eat anything that you can't identify, and that doesn't just go to mushrooms. You know, you don't just go eat stuff because it's there. You should know what it is before you eat it, regardless of whether it's a mushroom or a fish or a plant. So, you know, once you've identified what you have, then there's all kinds of you know, recipes are available, and there's other mushrooms. You know, a lot of people, you know, there's oyster, you know, mushrooms,
right?
and I would look at something like this, uh, you know, right here. I mean, these are oyster mushrooms, if you can see those. They all have like all different types. These are easier to grow. They're a lot cheaper. You can buy these in the store. If you want to get familiar with the taste of them to see if it's something worth your while to go out and look for. But they have their own self-growing kits. If you want to get into that side of it, I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do with mushrooms as they become a hobby. And I think there's always controversy on what's healthy and what you should eat. I think they're very healthy. I think they're good for you, and I think it's also kind of a double positive. You get out in the nature, you see a lot of things, and get some exercise, and then also have a little something to take home and eat to kind of make your diet healthier.
Yeah, so when you're out there walking around, getting that exercise, take a look around. Maybe start looking a little more specifically at some ash trees and dying ash trees, and you'll find some of these golden little nuggets out there. Be sure to go ahead and do your research and make sure it is what you think it is, and Google up some recipes, enjoy them. And this has been our episode on mushroom foraging. We hope you enjoyed it, and be sure to tune in next time on Jack of All Trades.